Over the next 12 weeks or so, I'm going to preach the greatest sermon ever preached. Of course, it's not my own, is it? A.T. Robertson describes the Sermon on the Mount this way. It stands out as the greatest single sermon of all time in its penetration, pugnancy, and power. And no, the greatest sermon ever preached, of course, it has to be a sermon preached by Jesus. And on the Sermon on the Mount, we get this description of what it means to be a faithful follower of him, what it means to live out our lives as a disciple of Jesus Christ. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer's Cost of Discipleship, he begins a section on the Sermon on the Mount this way. He says, let us picture the scene. Jesus on the mountain, the multitude, and the disciples. The people see Jesus with his disciples who have gathered around him. Until quite recently, these men had been completely identified with the multitude. They were just like the rest. Then came the call of Jesus, and at once they left all and followed him. Since then, they have belonged to him, body and soul. Now they go with him, live with him, and follow him wherever he leads them. Something unique has occurred to them. That disconcerting and offensive fact stares the people in the face. The disciples see the people from whom which they themselves have come. These people are the lost sheep of the house of Israel, the elect people of God. And so this sermon is primarily to the disciples. That's who he gathers around himself. But the crowds that he left were close by. And by the end of the sermon, we find that those crowds are still there. So this sermon is to the disciples about what it means to be a disciple, but it's supposed to be heard by the crowd as well. Michael Wilkins writes about it this way. He says the Sermon on the Mount is primarily instruction for the disciples about how life is to be lived on this earth in the light of the radical truth that the kingdom of heaven has arrived. But secondarily, it holds out an invitation, not entrance requirements, to the crowd to enter the kingdom. Some overlap will occur because the crowds that Jesus left at the beginning of the sermon appear at the end of the sermon, exclaiming that Jesus was teaching them with an authority that they not found in the teachers of the law. And so Jesus does teach. Teaches disciples, teaches the crowd, and he teaches as one with authority. It is the greatest sermon ever preached. The question is, how will it affect our lives?